Welcome. Whether you are in your Sunday best, new fresh pajamas that you have chosen just to join us, or if it has been a couple days as you greet us this day, to you we say, wherever you are, whoever you are, welcome to Beacon Unitarian Universalist Congregation. I'm Reverend Dr. Robin Tanner, one of the ministers here in this community. We are so glad to have you here with us in a place where we believe in radical inclusion, that each of us has a spark within, and together, across any distance, our light yet shines, and we can be a beacon. So come, let us kindle the flame. Whether we are rising to meet the sun this day, garden planted, ready for the struggle, whether you are just coming off shift as an essential worker, exhausted with fatigue heavy on the eyelids, whether your heart is breaking with the sorrow of another loved one gone. Wherever you are in the world, whoever you are, however your soul is carrying this day, welcome. Let us kindle the flame.
Now we light our flaming chalice, the symbol of our faith, rekindling the light within each one of us and drawing strength from the words of Reverend Marta Valentine. Be still with me and enter into the crescent fold of my arm. As I gather you in this time and space, wind your thoughts like the river towards the center of who we are this morning as one body and out among others in the world. Be still with me and enter into this celebration of resilience and resurrection, for we are vessels eternally rising out of the water, alive, with a purpose and strength unknown to us. Be still with me and enter quietly into this place of unbound love and gratitude.
I'm here at Beacon. I came to collect the mail and to water the piano. Yes, it does need watering. And I decided to come see what was going on with the Wonder Box. So let's take a look, shall we? Here we go. And there it is. That's our Wonder Box. Let's see if there's anything in it. I wonder, could there be something inside that Wonder Box? Oh, look at that. Look who popped out of the Wonder Box. Look at that. It's Callum and Sammy. I wonder what they're doing in the Wonder Box. Maybe they can tell us a little bit about how they're using their bodies in difficult times and the wisdom that their bodies have to offer them.
In these times of physical distancing, without Taekwondo and physical activities to help keep me in shape, this is what I'm doing to stay fit.
Inhale up. Exhale down. Inhale, look up, flat back. Exhale, jump. Inhale, upward dog. Exhale, downward dog. Head up. Exhale, head to the knees. Inhale, come up. And Samasthiti. Thank you. What Sammy shared, a yogic sun salutation, was great for able-bodied people and those who are lithe and blessed with agility. But what about so many others who are struggling or might have a physical impairment? And so for that, let's turn to Callum, who also jumped out of the Wonder Box and had a really difficult time last year. I think I remember that you were like in a wheelchair or something like that,
Yeah,
right?
I've been in a wheelchair for a long time, and my arms got like used to going like this.
Uh-huh. So do you remember how long you were in the wheelchair for?
Month.
Wow, that's a really long time. And then you had like a special brace. I think I saw you on
Oh, it was
crutches.
2 weeks. Yeah.
2 weeks, yeah. All right. Okay. So that's a really long time. Can you tell me when you were in the wheelchair and then in the brace and then on the crutches, you couldn't do your normal stuff, right? You couldn't run, you couldn't kick a soccer ball. But were there other things that you could do
I could
during
play
that time?
video games. I
A
could
lot of video games, okay.
and I could read, which was
You,
fun.
you could read, you could play a lot of video games. Was there anything else that you could do physically?
Not really, unless you're counting sit on the couch.
Unless I'm counting sitting on the couch. Did you find that your body changed when you were having this time?
This leg is smaller than the other leg. I
Uh-huh.
did not use it for a long time,
Right.
and it's like not as strong, so I have to like work on.
So you have to spend some time building it back up. Can you tell me, did you find your arms were getting stronger because of all the wheelchair pushing that you had to do?
Yeah, and the crutches help me, and now I can dent a real Major League Baseball.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So like you got some upper body strength, right?
Yeah.
Even though you couldn't use your lower body, you could use your upper body a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, what was like, I know it wasn't a fun time, but given that it was the time it was there anything fun about it?
Got to eat a lot of candy.
Got to eat a lot of candy. Ask you, so now during these coronavirus days when we're stuck in our houses and not really seeing our friends, like you can't see your friend Anthony, what are you doing to keep positive? What are you doing to keep healthy, and how are you using your body?
Well, I'm going outside, I'm playing wiffle ball, I'm FaceTiming with friends, I'm doing a bunch of things. And of course, I'm giving the guinea pigs a lot of love.
Giving your guinea pigs a lot of love and time. That's a really good thing to do. But I bet you did that when you were having the surgery and when you were in the wheelchair as well, right? Yeah, that's great.
More love.
You can get even more love to the guinea.
Yeah, but the more time there is, the annoyinger it gets, because they're always asking for food or like leaking. Gets it sometimes.
So you have all this time to lavish attention on them. That's great. Well, Callum, I'm so happy that you took the time to talk with me today.
We've heard from so many of you in these past weeks about the new things that you're discovering. Some people are starting to do jigsaw puzzles. Others have taken up crocheting. Someone's even trying to learn the piano. Wow, that's a real feat. So whatever you're doing in these times, different from your normal physical routine, it's great. We'd love to hear from you. And please do take care of yourselves. Very good care of yourselves. Wash hands, people.
Have you been wondering how we can support the people most affected by the pandemic? I'm Nancy Griffith, a member of Beacon's Green Earth Ministry, also called GEM. We work for environmental justice. This is the second of 3 Sundays on which Beacon will donate your non-pledge offerings to help some of those hardest hit by the pandemic. Your donations will go to the COVID-19 Emergency Response Fund of La Casa de Don Pedro in Newark. La Casa has been providing educational, environmental, and other services to the people of the north end of Newark since 1972. Jim initially contacted La Casa about its environmental work, but because of COVID-19, La Casa has had to suspend this work. Instead, your contributions will help La Casa support people who have been hard hit by the pandemic. The easiest way to give is to text a dollar amount to 978-203-5733. If this is your first time donating to Beacon via text, just follow the prompts after you text the amount and have your credit card ready. You can also make a contribution via PayPal or by a check made out to Beacon with La Casa on the memo line. Thank you for your generous contribution. Now, Carrie Puglisi, La Casa's Director of Program and Fund Development, will tell you more about La Casa's work.
Thank you, Nancy, and good morning, Summit. We are excited to be with you again from La Casa de Don Pedro. In this video, we're excited to be sharing with you some snippets, some vignettes of different ways that La Casa de Don Pedro continues to be engaged with our community. And thanks to your support, we'll be able to do even more to support our community during this difficult time. Thank you all very much.
Today I have a friend, Mr. Frog. Mr. Frog, how are you?
Good morning, Chris. I'm good.
Oh,
Dile a Miss Hart que hiciste aquí.
Okay. Hi, Miss Hart. I do this
Yesterday.
And I do this the bean, and then I make the cup, and then I make the sun.
No, we put it in the window. How many ducks has?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Wow, good job.
Miss Nadia, yo hice la tarea. Yo necesito hacer la boca aquí.
Dami está terminando ya de pintar su arco iris. Muy bien, Dami, muy bien. Sin salirse, cariño. Lo estás haciendo perfecto.
In this holiest time in the Islamic lunar calendar, many among us and throughout the world observe Ramadan, a month of fasting, reading of the Quran, prayer, and charity. Ramadan is more than just a chance to purify the body, mind, and soul for the coming year. It calls one to humbly remember those who are living in hunger and poverty on a daily basis, and allows for us to truly count our blessings and give thanks from within to express our gratitude outwardly for the blessings we've been given. This morning, we thank nurses, doctors, EMTs, and all healthcare professionals for the sacrifices they make every day to keep our communities safe. We think of all of the seen and unseen essential workers, from the warehouse manager to our postal delivery person, people whose everyday labor make it possible for us to live. Today, we hold in our hearts the families of Virginia Dearborn and Martin Levine, two long-standing Beacon members who passed away this week. We also hold the family of Reverend Emily Bogus in our hearts and minds as they mourn the loss of Emily's father, David Schaeferman. Celebrations and heartbreaks are easier to navigate when we share them with others. And in that spirit of unity, we invite you, wherever you are, to light a candle in honor of the roses, thorns, and the buds in the lives of those gathered here and in our extended community.
I am quarantining with an almost 2-year-old, which means on the daily, I read about 12 times a book called Moo, Ba, La La La. Now, you wouldn't think that that is necessarily a spiritual title, friends. And yet, I have found myself pondering the last line of that book late into the night. The book takes you through sounds of all different kinds of animals. A cow says moo, a sheep says ba, 3 singing pigs say la la la. You get the idea. At the end, right after a horse says neigh, the story concludes with all of the animals reunited, and then this parenthetical question. It's quiet now. What do you say? Perhaps at last where you are, it's quiet. Maybe you have found a quiet in your life that you have never known or not known for years. Perhaps it's the silence of the hum of cars or the rustle of a city that has suddenly been brought to a buzz. Perhaps it's the emergence of sound now that you never noticed, bird song. In this time of meditation, I want to invite you to take some time for stillness in a guided meditation, to join me in finding the quiet now, to see what the still small voice has to say. We'll begin with our breath, drawing in that breath through the nose, and if you're able, exhaling back out through the nose. Center yourself slowly into the rhythm that you were gifted at birth. If you feel comfortable and able, I invite you to close your eyes now. And as you continue in this breathing, finding your slowed rhythm, imagine yourself now in your mind's eye, in a place that is cherished, in a place where you find ease. Here in this place, as you settle in to notice your surroundings, the temperature of air, the soft rumblings of life around you, the smells, the colors. You notice before you that another person is in this space. And as you make out their features, you realize it is yourself from some point in the future. I invite you to listen through the sacred quiet and wonder, what do you say? What wisdom or words might your future self grant you now? As you're ready, find that rhythm once more of your breath and thank your future self for this time. And with that breath, the rhythm of drawing in and exhaling out, come back now to your awareness of this time and this space.
After a 25-year gap, I have returned to gym class. I'm doing so in order to support my children and their gym credits for online school. It began with a 10-minute morning yoga class thanks to YouTube. My family and I giggled our way through contorting our bodies into pretzels and trees and dogs, similar to the poses you saw Sammy doing earlier, with one key difference. There is no way that I was going to allow anyone to film it and show it on YouTube. This does not need to go onto social media. While it might not have been pretty, I noticed immediately afterward how easily I moved about the world. I noticed an absence of discomfort. Strangely, it was a discomfort in my body that had crept secretly, quietly, unnoticed. I had no idea how much discomfort I lived with on a daily basis. Its absence showed me how much I had unconsciously adapted my movements in order to limit my discomfort. Each day that I move through the yoga exercises, I discover a freedom that I had forgotten. I wonder, what absences are awakening us to new insights? The absence of noise is opening our ears to the music of nature and silence. It was thought that there were no birds in Wuhan, China, but that's not true. Their melodies just couldn't be heard over the noise. As Reverend Robin said in our meditation this morning, the absence of noise awakens in us an ability to hear what's always been there. The absence of an endless food supply is opening our minds to sustainability and equity. How much do we need? How much do we waste? How do we need to change so that others may have, or everyone may have what we need? What practices will help us transform? I was struck, for instance, in Tuli's conversation last week with her friend. We learned how the practice of fasting from food and water from sunrise to sunset throughout the month of Ramadan helps Muslims rebalance the external needs of the body with the inner needs of the spirit. And of course, the absence of connection is opening our hearts. For the first time in human history, the entire planet is learning how to isolate from one another. And for the first time in human history, we have the technology that allows us to connect with one another across the isolation. Letters and postcards, old school, to connect our inner thoughts. phone calls to connect our voices, and yes, virtual gatherings to connect our bodies. It has been such a gift to have this technology in this time. And yet, we here at Beacon have been hearing a growing lament. Why do I feel so exhausted after these virtual gatherings? Why do I feel so fatigued? Psychologists have an answer. It's a little bit of trickery. When we gather virtually, our mind is tricking us into thinking that we are together. But the body expresses the reality through fatigue. The body misses the physical connection. It reminds us that there still is a very real absence. I've had an image in my head for the last few weeks from my own youth group days. It's an image of a couch with 10 youth just crammed in. It's an image where you don't know where one person begins and another person ends. It's arms and legs all over the place. It's an image of body belonging. For our bodies have skin hunger. They need to be touched and embraced. They need to be with one another. That's why Beacon's closing benediction each week in service, when we are gathered in presence, is such a sacred moment. As we go forth out into the world, we take one another by hand and we lift our prayer, our intention for the world that week together. We embody our oneness, our connection, and people have shared with us time and time again. I'm actually surprised at how many times I hear this, that this is the one time each week that they are touched. So maybe we aren't just physically distancing now. Maybe we've been struggling with it all along. Yet this pandemic is awakening the absence in us. To be held is what it means to be human. In this time of absence, what wisdom do our bodies offer? What do they teach us about being human? Matthew Sanford has been a guide for me in learning about absence in relation to body wisdom. At the age of 13, he and his family were in a terrible accident. Their car slid on the ice and skidded, tumbled end over end. After 3 days in a coma, Matthew woke. And he woke to a terrible reality. His father and his sister had died. His mother and his brother were merely bruised and scratched, and he was paralyzed from the waist down. In that moment, he looked at his mother and his brother, and he saw in their faces their worry, their loss, and their, honestly, survivor's guilt. And he decided that he would live, and that if he couldn't live for himself, he would live for them. And in his living, he discovered body wisdom. Now, my family and I have been watching a show all about science, and they had this one excerpt in which they invited people to come forward and to sit down at a table. They put their arm on the table and then they covered it so they couldn't see their arm any longer. They attached a fake arm to them and they were sitting, lying side by side. The practitioners took a brush, a paintbrush, made it a little wet, and the person watched as the paintbrushes brushed the fake hand, and with their real hand, they felt the other paintbrush brushing their real hand, side by side. One they could see, one they couldn't. And when they were done, the practitioner then took a hammer. They surprised them, took a hammer and banged their fake hand. 90% of the people jumped back in horror, scared that they were going to get hit. And they did. And they said they could even feel it in their hand, although the person did not hit their real hand. Funny. They had tricked the mind into believing that the fake hand was their own, so much so that the hand felt it. Likewise, Matthew Sanford's practice to reconnect his mind's intentions with his body's actions was a profound learning. He learned that the body never stopped talking to the mind. He was told by doctors that he would no longer have any physical sensation, but it wasn't true. It was just got quieter, more subtle. He called it an energetic presence. And the only way that he was able to know that was by paying careful attention to his body. If he got distracted, as we all do, he couldn't hear it. But if he paid attention, he could learn and understand what his body was trying to say. He writes in his memoir, Waking, a memoir of trauma and transcendence. Imagine walking from a well-lit room into a dark one. Imagine the darkness as a visual expression of silence. My rehabilitation made a mistake with the silence by focusing on the absence of light. It too quickly accepted the loss and taught me to willfully strike out against the darkness. It told me to move faster rather than slower, to push harder rather than softer. It guided me to compensate for what I could not see. Another course of action, however, is patience. Stop moving. Wait for your eyes to adjust. Allow for the stillness, and then see what is possible. Although full-fledged vision does not return, usually there is enough light to find one's way across the room. After a while, the moon may come out. Sounds might gain texture. The world might reveal itself once again, only darker. In this time of pandemic, we might focus solely on the absence and the absence alone. We might strike out against it as Matthew was told to do, running away from it, moving faster, pushing harder. Matthew Sanford's body taught him a different way, to slow down, to pay attention, to adjust to the stillness and see what's always been there. Brother David Steindl-Rast has said that another name for God is surprise. Just when your plans were carefully laid, surprise. Just when you've given up, surprise. This too is what it means to be human. It's very clear from Matthew Sanford's life. Surprise was everywhere. Now, I don't believe that there is an omnipotent being who is pulling the strings of surprise. In fact, I wholeheartedly reject that deity. But I know from experience that life is full of surprises, that people are full of surprises. Writer Mark Nepo reminds us that, quote, any moment of interest, any moment of pain, any moment of adversity can remind us, can surprise us into the larger totality of life, breaking our current limits and allowing us the chance to redefine ourselves in regard to the larger sense that is upon us. That we are opened, he says, so suddenly, so often, is the way that the soul unfolds on earth. Surprises, says Mark Nepo, grow us. We can't prepare ourselves for the surprises. Often, too often, we over-prepare. But that has a way of walling us off from life. That's what my body was trying to teach me. That was its wisdom. It showed me how I had walled myself off, how I had stopped moving in the world as I wanted, as a way of preventing pain. But what I discovered, to my surprise, thanks to gym class, is that I had walled myself off from really living. I had walled myself off from listening. I had stopped paying attention. I had moved harder and faster and ignored it. And actually, I was living with discomfort. We can't prepare ourselves for all the eventualities of surprise. We can't. but we can prepare ourselves for how we will respond to the surprises of life. Look at Matthew Sanford. And that's where I think the holy resides. The holy is within us, in our bodies, in our hearts, in our eyes, in our ears, saying, I know what you're going through right now is absolute crap. It's miserable. Would you like some help? Take my hand. I promise I am right here. That's why we incorporate rituals and spiritual practices into our lives, like the practice of slowing down and fasting throughout the month of Ramadan, to teach us to be nimble, to rebalance, to look out for the lessons, to make meaning of this time, and how to respond to the surprises along the way. Our virtual gatherings are game changers in the midst of this pandemic, but we are not robots. I know you like to think you are. I do. I think I'm a robot, but we're human beings. We are meant to live embodied, interconnected existences, and our bodies remind us of that. They remind us with fatigue and with exhaustion, with discomfort, with joy. They remind us that they are here. Your practice this week is to listen, to pay attention, as Matthew Sanford says, to pay attention and slow down, to walk into a dark room and allow the light to come into that darkness. I wonder if you've seen the ceramic candle holders where 4 persons create a circle, sort of arm in arm, sometimes sitting, often standing around the candle itself. Have you seen that? You can Google it. It's like a community gathered around the hearth. This is what it means to be embodied. This is what it means to be human, to be gathered and to be present, to be embodied together. Throughout this time, I have looked for that physical, embodied, and gathered image in all of the amazing ways that we have shown up physically for one another. Sometimes in our voices over the telephone to a friend long gone, but remembered. Sometimes by the banging of a pan in support of frontliners. Sometimes by the honking of a horn as you drive by a child's house for their birthday. We have been ingenious in creating ways to be embodied and gathered in this time of physical distancing. And there was nothing more creative than the story I heard this week. On a Thursday evening, one by one, people gathered on the front lawn and in the streets and extending to the yards all around a house. Each person was 6 feet apart from one another, but they were present. They were embodied. They were there, gathered. The woman inside the house was sitting down at her dinner table, eating supper by herself. And then she heard a voice. And then a few other voices joined that one. They were calling to her, singing to her beyond the threshold. When she opened the door, there was her community, her choir, singing to her, reminding her that they were there. What a gift. My friends, may we too cross the threshold of this time. May we learn from the absences that are all around us. May we awaken to a new way of being human, present, embodied, gathered, one. May it be so. Amen.
You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do. Oh Lord, you got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you got to sing along. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you got to dance all around. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do. Oh Lord, you got to do when the Spirit says do.
As we go forth from our time together today, we can still try to honor the Spirit that even now says that we can do, sing, and dance. In the words of Amy Zucker Morgenstern, never has it been more true than now. We extinguish this flame, but the sparks within us remain alight. From each of us, in our supposed solitude, the signals buzz and hum, sparkling through space one to another, connecting us invisibly but palpably. We are one. And from every window, our light shines.